Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hi, I'm a 24-year-old woman, and this all started about a year ago when I got a new job at a local marketing firm. My name is Hannah, and I had just graduated from college with a degree in marketing. I was excited to start my career, and I was eager to make a good impression at my new job. The firm I joined was relatively small, with about 20 employees, but it had a good reputation, and I was thrilled to be part of the team. My first few weeks were great there. I was learning a lot, and my colleagues seemed friendly and welcoming. However, things took a turn for the worse when I started getting to know one of my male co-workers, Chris. Chris was in his late 20s. He had been with the company for several years, and he was well liked by the management. At first, he seemed friendly, offering to show me the ropes and then help me get settled in. But it didn't take too long for his behavior to become inappropriate. He would make offhand comments about my appearance, touching my shoulder or back in ways that made me feel uncomfortable. At first, I tried to laugh it off or politely brushed it aside. But his comments and touches became more frequent and more invasive. One day, he cornered me in the break room and made a lewd comment about my outfit. I felt trapped and violated. I told him to stop, but he just laughed it off and told me that I was being too sensitive. After that incident, I went to HR to report him, but they just brushed it off, saying that Chris was just being friendly and that it didn't mean any harm. They just advised me to try to get along with him. When Chris realized that I had reported him, his behavior escalated from harassment to outright bullying. He would publicly criticize my work, spread rumors about me, and make my life a living hell in the office. He even started trying to mess up my projects, causing me to miss deadlines and get in trouble with the management. I felt isolated and powerless, and my colleagues seemed to avoid getting involved, and management continued to turn a blind eye. The stress really became unbearable, and I dreaded going to work every day. I started having anxiety attacks, and I couldn't sleep at night. I knew I couldn't stay in such a toxic environment, so I decided to quit. After quitting, I spent a few weeks job hunting, and I finally landed a position at a new company. It was a larger firm with a more professional atmosphere. I hoped that it would be a fresh start. My new colleagues were friendly, and the work environment was much better. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. But my relief was short-lived. A few weeks into my new job, I noticed a familiar face in the office. It was Chris. My heart sank. He had somehow managed to get a job at the same company, and I couldn't believe my bad luck. At first, I tried to avoid him, hoping that he would leave me alone. But Chris made it clear that he wasn't going to let that happen. He would show up at my desk, make snide remarks, and then continue his harassment. He even started following me home, showing up at my apartment building and watching me from a distance. It felt like I was living in a nightmare, and I didn't know what to do. I went to HR again, but they were hesitant to take any action. Chris had a knack for playing the victim, and he convinced them that I was the one who was the problem. I felt trapped and helpless, and I couldn't quit another job, but I also couldn't continue living in fear either. Desperate and out of options, I decided to call my father. He was a retired firefighter, a strong and protective man who has always been my rock, and I explained everything to him, and he was furious. He promised to come down and help me deal with Chris. A few days later, My dad showed up at my apartment. He took me out for dinner and then reassured me that everything would be okay. He decided to stay with me at my apartment for a few days, promising that he would help. I didn't know what my father had in store, but his mere presence was reassuring to say the least. After another terrible day at work, I drove back to my apartment with Chris following not too far behind me. I got nervous. This was usually the worst part of my day, me getting out of my car and getting cornered by him on my way inside. Sometimes I tried running in quickly. Sometimes I stayed in my car for an hour or two until he leaves. And sometimes I just have to deal with him. Taking a deep breath, I exited my car and I start walking towards my apartment as per usual. Chris immediately got out of his car and briskly walked over to me. No doubt, preparing a whirlwind of uncomfortable things to say to me. But before he could get close, the door opened and Chris stopped. When Chris saw my father, he looked nervous but tried to play it cool. My dad walked up to him and said, "We need to talk, now." I then went inside and they both stood in front of the apartment, and I could hear my dad's raised voice as he confronted Chris. "You've been harassing my daughter, and it stops now. If you ever go near her again, you'll regret it." Chris tried to deny it, but my dad wasn't having any of it. "I don't care what excuses you have. You leave her alone, or I'll make sure you face the consequences." Chris finally broke down and admitted that he was attracted to me and he wanted a relationship. My dad was livid. He screamed at Chris. "Attracted? Attraction is no excuse for harassment. You've terrorized my daughter and it ends today, young man." My dad didn't get physical, but his tone and presence were enough to make Chris realize that he couldn't continue his behavior. After the confrontation, Chris left. The next morning, I found out that Chris had quit his job. I was absolutely relieved, but I was still shaken by everything that had happened. My dad stayed with me for a few more days, making sure that I was okay and helping me regain my confidence. I haven't seen Chris since that day, and I'm finally starting to feel safe again. My new job has been supportive, and my colleagues have been understanding. I'm grateful for my dad's intervention and the strength he had showed in protecting me. Looking back, I realized how important it was to stand up for yourself and seek help when you need it. No one should have to endure harassment or bullying, and it's also crucial to have a support system in place. So, Chris, you asshole, the co-worker who wouldn't leave me alone and bullied me, let's not meet again. And to everyone reading this, please be cautious and stay safe. Don't be afraid to ask for help and also take action if you find yourself in a similar situation. I have an experience that I would like to share that deeply scared me. This happened years ago when I was still a small girl, but I want to share it here in case it may help someone. My name is Amanda. I'm a 25-year-old woman now, but this story takes place when I was just 7. I remember it vividly because it was one of the most terrifying experiences that I have ever had in my life. My family and I lived in a small town in Ohio, and there wasn't much to do there. So when the circus came to town, it was a big deal. I was ecstatic. My parents, my older brother, and I spent the entire day at the circus. We watched the acrobats, animal shows, and of course, the clowns. I've always been a bit wary of clowns, but that day, I decided to push my fears aside and have fun. The circus was everything that I had imagined and more. The smell of popcorn and cotton candy, filled the air in my lungs, and the sound of laughter and excitement was all around. After the main show, there was a special area set up for kids to play in. It was a colorful and lively place filled with games and small rides and entertainers. My brother was off with his friends, and my parents were nearby, chatting with other parents. So, I wandered into the kids' area, eager to explore and play. That's when I met Mr. Waffles, the clown. He was dressed in a bright patchwork costume with oversized shoes and a red nose. His face was painted with white and also with a big friendly smile. He seemed to be the main attraction in the kids' area, and the children all flocked to him. "Hey there, little miss. What's your name?" he asked me with a jolly voice.
"I'm Amanda,"
I replied, giggling a little. Mr. Waffles had a funny way of talking that made me feel at ease. Well, Amanda, would you like to play a very special game with me?" he said, bending down to my level.
"Sure,"
I said excitedly. Mr. Waffles explained that he wanted to play hide and seek. He would hide somewhere very hidden and that I would have to look for him. He told me to close my eyes and count to 10. Eager to play, I shut my eyes tightly and I began counting.
1, 2, 3.
After reaching 10, I opened my eyes and I began my search. The other kids were still playing nearby, but I was focused on finding Mr. Waffles. I looked behind tents, under tables, and around corners, but I couldn't find him. Finally, I wandered to a more secluded area and near a door to a trailer. There he was. He was crouched behind some boxes. I exclaimed,
"Found you!"
Mr. Waffles seemed very happy that I found him. "Well done, Amanda. You've won a prize, but I have it inside my trailer," he said, standing up and reaching for the door handle. And just then, I heard my parents calling for me. Amanda, sweetie, it's time to go now." I turned toward their voices and then called back,
"I'm over here."
Mr. Waffles' face darkened and he quickly walked off without another word. I felt a strange mix of disappointment and relief, so I just ran back to my parents and we headed home because it was getting late. Later that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the circus and Mr. Waffles and all the things that we did there. I was lying in my bed, drifting off to sleep, when I heard a faint knock on my window. My heart skipped a beat and I sat up listening closely. I slowly got out of bed and I walked to the window. My room was on the ground floor. I hesitated before pulling back the curtain. And to my surprise and horror, standing in my backyard, illuminated by the moonlight, was Mr. Waffles. He was waving at me, his smile now appearing sinister and menacing. I screamed as loud as I could, backing away from the window. My parents burst into my room, and my dad holding a baseball bat and my mom looking frantic. "Amanda, what's wrong?" my mom asked, pulling me into her arms. And I explained while pointing to the window that Mr. Waffles the clown was outside. My dad went to the window and then looked out, but Mr. Waffles was no longer there. He said that he didn't see anyone, and he was trying to calm me down. But I swore that he was there. I was not the type of kid to lie or play pranks on my parents, so they ended up believing me. My parents exchanged worried glances and decided to call the police. The police arrived shortly after, and then they took my statement. They searched the backyard, and the surrounding area, but they found no sign of Mr. Waffles. They assured me and my parents that they would do everything that they could to find him. I was terrified. My parents tried to comfort me, but I couldn't shake the image of Mr. Waffles standing outside my window. I didn't sleep at all that night, and for a few weeks afterward, I couldn't sleep without checking my windows and locking them securely. As I grew up, the memory of that night stayed with me. I tried to put it behind me, but every time that I heard about a circus coming to town, I felt a shiver run down my spine. I became wary of clowns, and I avoided circuses altogether. I later learned that Mr. Waffles had never been found. The circus had left town the day after the incident, and there was no way to trace him. The police suspected that he had been following the circus from town to town, using his clown persona as a cover. My parents and the police took my fears seriously, and I am extremely grateful for that. But the experience definitely left a lasting mark on me. Mr. Waffles, the clown who followed me home, I hope I never see you again. And right now, I can confidently say that I do not like clowns anymore. For this story, let me say my name is Raul, and I'm a 17-year-old high school junior. I'm half American and half Filipino. I go to a fairly large school in Windsor, Ontario, and I'd say that I have a pretty typical high school life. I'm on the volleyball team, which has made me somewhat popular, and I am known for being a decent player. I wouldn't call myself a heartthrob or anything like that, but I guess you could say that I'm a little bit handsome. I have a tight-knit group of friends, and we've been through a lot together. My friends and I hang out almost every day after school, either practicing sports, playing video games, or just goofing around. There's James, the jokester of the group, Brandon, the quiet but smart one, Lisa, who's like a sister to me, and Lucas, who has been my best friend since elementary school. We all looked out for each other, and I've always felt safe and supported around them. Being on the volleyball team and somewhat popular, I am no stranger to getting love letters and random gifts from admirers. It's a bit flattering, and my friends often tease me about it. I usually take it in stride, and it's become a bit of a running joke among us. But one day, I got a letter that didn't feel like the usual harmless crush notes. It was left in my locker, like many others, but the contents were different. The letter was written on a piece of ornate, cream-colored paper with intricate designs around the edges. It smelled faintly of lavender, which was unusual. The letter read, "Dear Raul, I've been watching you for a while now. I know everything about you, your likes, your dislikes, your routines. You may not know me yet, but you will soon. You're special, and I have plans for the both of us. And don't worry, I'll make sure you will understand in time." I felt a chill run down my spine as I read the words. It was creepy, almost obsessive, and definitely not the usual kind of attention that I was used to. I decided to show it to my friends after school. When I showed the letter to my friends, they didn't seem as freaked out as I was. James laughed and made jokes about my secret admirer, while Brandon and Lisa exchanged amused glances. Lucas, my best friend, just smirked and said, "Well, looks like someone's really into you, man." "Yeah, but this isn't like the other letters. This one feels different. It's creepy," I insisted. "Relax, Raul. It's probably just someone messing with you. Besides, if they were really dangerous, they wouldn't be leaving love notes." Lisa said, trying to reassure me. I tried to brush it off, but the letter lingered in my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and it made me feel uneasy. Over the next few days, I received more letters. Each one was written on the same ornate cream-colored paper with a lavender scent, and each one was progressively weirder and more aggressive in tone. One letter said, "Why are you ignoring me, Raul? You're making this harder than it needs to be. I thought you'd be more excited to know someone cares about you so deeply. Don't make me do something drastic to get your attention." Then another one said, "I saw you with Lisa today. She's not right for you. She doesn't understand you like I do. You need to stay away from her, or there will be consequences." The letters were becoming more specific, mentioning details about my daily life that only someone close to me would know. It was unsettling, and I started to feel paranoid. Who could be watching me so closely? One night, as I lay in bed, it hit me. The stalker might be someone close to me, someone who knew about my routines, my friends, and my personal life. The realization made my heart race. Could it be one of my friends? The thought was horrifying, but it made sense. I began to observe my friends more closely, looking for any signs of odd behavior. I watched how they reacted to the letters, how they interacted with me, and if they acted suspiciously. But nothing seemed out of the ordinary. A few days later, we were all in a hurry to get to practice. We were running late, and in a rush, Lucas's bag fell, scattering his things all over the floor. As we hurriedly picked everything up to help him, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Among his belongings was a stack of ornate cream-colored paper, the same kind that the stalker used for the letters. I felt a wave of shock and betrayal wash over me. Could it really be Lucas? I needed to confront him. After practice, I pulled Lucas aside. My heart was pounding and I felt sick to my stomach. "Hey, Lucas, I need to talk to you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Sure, what's up?" he replied, looking confused. "I saw the paper in your bag, the same paper that the stalker uses for the letters. What's going on, man?" His expression changed from confusion to guilt. He looked down, avoiding my eyes. He finally said, "Raul, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "What do you mean? Why did you do it?" I demanded, feeling a mix of anger and hurt. He took a deep breath and started to explain. "I've been in love with you for a long time, but I didn't know how to tell you. I thought if I got your attention through the letters, maybe you'd notice me in a different way. But it kinda got out of hand and I didn't know how to stop it." I was stunned. Lucas, my best friend, had been the one stalking me all along. I didn't know what to say. I felt the mix of emotions, betrayal, anger, and sadness. I said in a shaking voice, I can't believe you did this, Lucas. You made me feel so scared and paranoid. How could you?" "I'm sorry, Raul. I never meant to hurt you. I just didn't know how to handle my feelings," Lucas said, tears in his eyes. "I think it would be best if we don't see each other anymore. I need time to process this, and seriously, man, I can't be around you right now," I said, my voice firm. He nodded, tears streaming down his face, and said, I understand. I'm so sorry, Raul. I hope you can forgive me someday, though." After that day, I distanced myself from him. I told my other friends what had happened, and they were supportive. They couldn't believe that he had done something so extreme, but they stood by me. It took a while to feel safe again, but I eventually moved on. I focused on my sports, my studies, and spending time with my other friends. Lucas left our friend group and kept his distance, respecting my need for space. So Lucas, my former best friend, I do hope you are doing well, but far, far away from me. This happened to me over the past year, and I still get anxious thinking about it. To give you some context, I'm a 28-year-old woman living in a small town in upstate New York. My family has always been close-knit, but we have had our share of struggles, particularly with health issues. My father passed away 5 years ago due to complications from poor health. He had diabetes and also heart problems, and his death was a wake-up call for all of us. Losing him was devastating, but it also made me reevaluate my own lifestyle. I became obsessed with working out and also eating healthy. I was determined not to fall into the same patterns that led to my father's death. Exercise became my therapy, my way of coping with stress and grief. About 2 years ago, I joined a local gym that I absolutely loved. It was a small family-owned place with a friendly atmosphere. The staff knew me by name, and the regulars were always up for a chat. I usually went to the gym at 6 a.m. right when it opened. I liked working out early because it was less crowded, and it allowed me to start my day on a positive note before heading to work. The gym's location was convenient, just a 10-minute drive from my apartment, and it had all the equipment that I needed. The morning crew was small but very consistent, and we all became familiar faces to each other. One day about a year ago, a new guy started showing up at the gym around the same time as me. He introduced himself as Greg. He seemed friendly enough, and he quickly integrated himself into our little morning group. Greg was in his late 30s, always wearing a bright smile and eager to offer workout tips. At first, I really appreciated his enthusiasm. It was nice to have someone to chat with, and he seemed genuinely interested in fitness. We would occasionally work out near each other, and he would spot me when I was lifting weights. It seemed very harmless, and I enjoyed having someone around who took fitness as seriously as I did. However, things started to change after a few months. Greg began showing up more often. Almost every time that I was at the gym, he was there too. He started hovering around me, even when I was doing exercises that didn't require a spotter. He would comment on my form, suggest new routines, and ask personal questions that felt intrusive. I really tried to be polite but distant, hoping that he would just take the hint. I told myself that he was just trying to be helpful, but his constant presence was beginning to make me feel uncomfortable. I decided to change my workout schedule to see if I could avoid him in any way. I started going to the gym at different times, sometimes in the afternoon or even in the late evening. But no matter when I went, Greg would eventually show up. Each time, he acted like it was just a happy coincidence, saying things like, "Oh, great minds think alike." Or, "Looks like we're on the same schedule." It was unnerving. I couldn't understand how he was always there, but I didn't want to make a scene or accuse him of anything without solid proof. The situation escalated when I started seeing Greg outside the gym. One Saturday morning, I went to my favorite coffee shop to grab some coffee and to read for a bit. And as I settled into a corner, I heard the familiar voice. "Hey, fancy seeing you here," Greg said, taking a seat at the table next to mine. My heart sank. This was my go-to spot, a place where I felt safe and relaxed, and seeing him there felt like an invasion of my personal space. "I didn't know you came here," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, I love this place. Best coffee in town, you know," he replied, flashing that unsettling bright smile. After that, I started seeing him more frequently around town, at the grocery store, the park, even at the library. Each time, he acted like it was a random encounter, but I knew deep down that it wasn't. The odds of us running into each other so often were too slim to be mere coincidence. But the final straw came when Greg appeared near my workplace. I work at a marketing firm downtown, and one afternoon I was leaving for lunch. I saw him standing across the street. He then waved and started walking toward me. "Hey, I was just in the area and I thought I'd grab some lunch. Want to join me?" he asked. Panic set in. How did he know where I worked? I hadn't mentioned my job or its location to him. "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm actually really busy today," I said, forcing a smile. "Maybe another time." Greg's expression suddenly changed though. His face twisted into a look of frustration and anger. "Why are you avoiding me?" he demanded. "I'm not avoiding you," I lied. "I just have a lot on my plate right now," I added. "You're lying. I can tell. Don't you know we belong together? Why can't you see that? Why are you avoiding me? I'm doing my best to be around you all the time and to see you all the time, but you just keep avoiding me, giving me that fake smile of yours." His words sent a chill down my spine. He had never said anything like that before, and I have never seen him like that before too. I realized then that this wasn't just a series of coincidences. Greg was stalking me, and Greg was mad crazy. "I need to go. Please leave me alone or I'll call the police on you," I said firmly. Greg's face contorted with rage, and then he yelled, "You're making a mistake! You're making a mistake! We belong together!" People on the street were starting to stare, and I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, making sure Greg could see what I was doing. "Leave now, or I will have you arrested," I said, my voice shaking. Greg hesitated, and then he turned and walked away, muttering under his breath. I watched him go, my heart pounding in my chest, and my knees were shaking. I stayed on the line with the dispatcher, explaining the situation and providing a description of Greg and the situation. A police officer came and I filed for a report. But since he didn't exactly harm me, and I could not provide concrete proof of the stalking, they couldn't do more. But I didn't see Greg after that day. He stopped coming to the gym, and I no longer ran into him around town. My friends and coworkers were also incredibly supportive, helping me feel safer during that difficult time. Despite Greg's disappearance, I really couldn't shake the fear that he had instilled in me. I was worried that he was just lurking around in the corners, watching me. I decided to find a new gym, even though I loved the one that I had been going to for years. It really broke my heart to leave that place. But I knew that this was the best thing for my safety and also for my peace of mind. I found another gym a bit further from my apartment, and the staff there were understanding when I explained my situation. It really took some time, but I eventually started to feel comfortable and safe again. I didn't have to work out while looking at my back anymore. Looking back, I realized how important it is to trust your instincts. If someone's behavior makes you uncomfortable, don't just ignore it. Don't just think that it was a mere coincidence. Speak up, take action, and then protect yourself. So, Greg, the gym buddy who took it too far, let's not meet again. Hello everyone, I'm Adam, and I'm a 25-year-old guy working at Walmart. Of course, I'm not gonna tell you which one. I have been working there for the past 3 years. It's not my dream job, but it pays the bills, and I am able to save up a bit while I figure out what I really want to do. I usually work the evening shift from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. It's not a bad schedule, as it leaves my mornings free, and I have grown accustomed to the routine. On this particular day, I was assigned to stock shelves in the grocery section. It's a task that I have done countless of times, and I usually zone out and get into a rhythm. But that day, something, or rather, someone, broke my routine in a way that still gives me chills. It started around 5 p.m. when a woman approached me as I was stocking the cereal aisle. She was in her early 30s with shoulder-length brown hair and a friendly demeanor. She asked where she could find a specific brand of granola. I pointed her to the right shelf, and I thought nothing of it. Helping customers is part of the job, and her question seemed perfectly normal. However, as I moved to restock another section, I noticed the same woman nearby. This time, she asked me where to find almond milk. I showed her the dairy section, and again, I didn't think much of it. Maybe she was just health conscious, and she had a lot of specific questions. But as I continued with my work, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was following me. No matter which aisle I moved to, she seemed to be there with another question. She asked about gluten-free bread, organic vegetables, and even cleaning supplies. Each time I patiently answered her questions, but the unease was beginning to set in. I started to wonder if I was overthinking things. Maybe she just had a lot of questions, and it was a coincidence that she kept finding me. But by the 5th or 6th encounter, I decided to test my theory. I moved to a completely different section of the store, away from the groceries, to see if she would follow. And sure enough, she appeared, asking where to find the light bulbs. My heart rate spiked. There was no way this was just a coincidence anymore. I tried to remain calm and polite though, but I was genuinely creeped out. I decided to take my break early. I headed to the employee area, and I stayed there for a while, hoping that she would finish her shopping and then leave. After about 20 minutes, I went back to the floor, cautiously scanning the aisles. Thankfully, I didn't see her anymore, and I instantly felt relief. Maybe it was just all in my head, and that she had already left. The rest of my shift went by uneventfully. I finished stocking the shelves, helped a few more customers, and then I clocked out at 11 p.m. I was tired. I was ready to go home. I headed to my car, which was parked in our employee lot, and I began to drive home. As I was driving, I noticed a car behind me. At first, I didn't think anything of it. There was only so many routes out of the Walmart parking lot, and it's not unusual to have cars behind you for a while. But as I continued to drive, the car stayed behind me, making the same turns that I did. I started to get a little paranoid. Was I just being jumpy because of what happened earlier? I decided to test it out. I took a few random turns, driving through residential areas and side streets that I knew well, but the car followed my every move. My heart was pounding now. I couldn't see the driver clearly, but I had a sinking feeling that it was the same woman from the store. I needed to do something. I didn't want to lead her to my apartment, so I made a split-second decision to drive to the nearest police station. As I pulled into the station parking lot, the car behind me suddenly sped off, and I only caught a glimpse of the driver, but it looked like a woman, possibly the same one who had been following me around in the store. My mind was racing. What did she want from me? Why was she following me? I sat in the parking lot for a few minutes, trying to calm down. I considered going into the station to file a report, but I hesitated. I didn't have any concrete evidence, just a series of unsettling encounters and a car that followed me for a while. Would the police even take me seriously? So I just decided to go home. I was on high alert the whole time. I kept checking my rearview mirror, making sure that I wasn't being followed again. The drive was tense, and every car that appeared behind me made my heart skip a beat. Thankfully, I made it home without any further incidents. And that night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the events in my mind, wondering if I was just being paranoid or if I had genuinely been in danger. The next day, I went back to work as usual, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I kept an eye out for that woman, but I didn't see her again. It's been a few weeks now and I haven't had any more creepy encounters. I still work at Walmart, and while I've had my share out of customers, nothing is as unsettling as what happened with that woman. I don't know if it was the same person following me in the car, but the coincidence is too eerie to ignore. So, to the woman who followed me around the store and then followed me home, I hope I never see you again. Hi everyone. I've been reading stories on this subreddit for a while, and I thought that I would share a story of mine. It's my first time posting on here, so please forgive me if I'm not the best storyteller. I'm 21 years old, and for this story you can call me Jake. I'm a college student pursuing a degree in computer science. I share an apartment with 3 of my best friends from high school, Mike, Tony, and Sam. We've known each other for years and have always been really close. We share everything with each other and have always been tight-knit. Our friend group also includes a few others who don't live with us but hang out with us often. One of them is Ryan. Ryan's been a part of our group for about 2 years now. He's a nice guy, friendly and outgoing, and we've always gotten along pretty well. We're a diverse group with different interests, but we've always found some common ground in our friendship. Things took an unexpected turn one night though, when we were all hanging out at our apartment. We were playing video games, and everyone was having a good time. At one point, Ryan asked if he could talk to me privately. I thought nothing of it and I agreed. We went to my room, and I could see that he was nervous. "Jake, there's something I've been wanting to tell you for a while now," he began, avoiding eye contact. "I've had feelings for you for some time now. I think I'm in love with you." I was stunned. I didn't see that coming at all. I had always seen Ryan as a good friend and nothing more. I took a deep breath, trying to process what he had just said. "Ryan, I'm flattered, but I'm not attracted to men," I said gently. "I see you as a friend, and I do hope we can keep things that way." Ryan looked heartbroken, and I felt terrible for hurting his feelings, but I wanted to be honest and clear about my own feelings. He nodded and said he understood, and then we went back to join the others. I hoped that that would be the end of it, and that things would go back to normal. Unfortunately, things didn't go back to normal. Over the next few days, Ryan's behavior became more aggressive and unsettling. He started sending me explicit messages and even tried to show me gay pornography. He was insisting that I would enjoy it if I just gave it a chance. I was uncomfortable, and I told him to stop, but he didn't listen. Ryan's actions didn't stop at just harassment. He began spreading rumors among our friends and classmates, claiming that I was secretly attracted to men but was too afraid to admit it. He made it sound like I was leading a double life, trying to hide my true self from everyone. The rumors created an awkward atmosphere, and I found myself constantly having to defend my sexuality. It was exhausting and frustrating, and it felt like my friendship with Ryan was turning into a nightmare. When I continued to reject his advances, Ryan started accusing me of being homophobic. He would publicly call me out, saying things like, "Why can't you just accept who you are, Jake? Are you that scared of being gay?" I tried to explain to him that rejecting his advances didn't make me homophobic. It just meant that I wasn't interested. But Ryan wouldn't listen. He was convinced that my refusal to be with him was rooted in prejudice, and he made it his mission to make me look bad in front of our friends. My friends could see what was happening, and they tried to intervene. Mike and Tony talked to Ryan, trying to make him understand that his behavior was toxic and unfair. But Ryan was relentless. He continued to harass me and spread lies, and it was taking a toll on my mental health. One evening, after another round of accusations and harassment from Ryan, our friend group had had enough. We sat down and had a serious conversation about what was happening. It was clear that Ryan's actions were damaging our friendship and creating a toxic environment for us. So we made the difficult decision to remove Ryan from our friend group. It wasn't easy because we had all been so close, but his behavior had crossed too many lines and we just couldn't let it continue anymore. A few days later, Ryan reached out to me one last time. He sent me a long emotional message saying that he couldn't live without me and that he would end his life if I didn't start a relationship with him. I was taken aback and I was deeply concerned for his well-being, but I knew that I couldn't give in to his demands. I replied, urging him to seek help and talk to someone about his feelings. I told him that threatening suicide was not the way to handle things and that I genuinely wanted him to be okay, but I couldn't be in a relationship with him. Ryan didn't respond to my message, and I was worried sick. I kept an eye for any news or updates about him, hoping that he was getting the help he needed. A few days later, I saw Ryan on campus. He looked tired and worn out, but he was alive, so I felt a mix of relief and sadness, knowing that he was struggling, but also that he hadn't gone through with his threat. Looking back, I realize how important it is to set boundaries and to stand up for yourself even when it's difficult. Speak up if you are being harassed or manipulated, regardless of the circumstances. So, Ryan, the friend who couldn't take no for an answer, I hope that you are well, my friend, but let's never meet again. I have been lurking here for a long time, reading everyone's stories, and I never thought that I would have one of my own to share. But after what happened to me, I think it's important to tell my story. Writing it down might help me process everything, and maybe it will also serve as a warning to others out there. To give you a bit of context, I'm a 32-year-old single mother living in a small town in Illinois. My name is Jennifer, and my son, Oliver, is 6 years old. He is the absolute center of my world. His father is not in the picture, having left us when Oliver was just a baby. And since then, it's just been the two of us, and we have built a pretty good life together. I work as a nurse, which means I have odd hours and long shifts. Balancing my work schedule while taking care of Oliver is challenging, but I try to manage. I don't have any family nearby. My parents retired to Florida, and my siblings live in different states. This means that I rely heavily on friends, neighbors, and trusted agencies for support, especially when it comes to babysitting. One evening, after a particularly long shift at work, I stopped by the grocery store to pick up a few things. I was exhausted, and all I wanted was to get home and then tuck Oliver into bed. I was unloading my groceries into the car, and I was fumbling with my keys, and I nearly dropped everything. That's when a man appeared seemingly out of nowhere. "Need a hand?" he asked, smiling warmly. I was taken aback, but I was grateful for the help. I said, "Oh, thank you. I'm just so tired today," trying to manage a smile. He helped me load the last of the groceries into my trunk and then introduced himself as Mark. He looked to be in his late 40s, with a friendly demeanor and an easy smile. He mentioned that he lived nearby and often shopped at the same store. I told him thank you, feeling genuinely grateful for what he has done, and I introduced myself too. "Oh, I'm Jennifer, by the way." "Nice to meet you, Jennifer. Happy to help," he said. I didn't think much of the encounter at first. I was just glad for the assistance on a tiring day. Over the next few weeks, I noticed Mark around town more often. I'd run into him at the grocery store, the coffee shop, and even at the park where I took Oliver to play. Each time, he would strike up a friendly conversation, offering help or just chatting about the weather. At first, it seemed like a series of happy coincidences. Mark was always polite and helpful, and I appreciated the friendly face in my otherwise busy and sometimes stressful life. But after a while, it didn't feel like a coincidence anymore. It felt weird and creepy, and I began to feel uneasy. It started when he showed up at Oliver's soccer practice. We had never discussed Oliver's activities, and I found it odd that he was there. When I asked him about it, he said he was thinking of signing his nephew up for the same league, and he wanted to check it out. My unease grew as Mark's appearances became more frequent and more targeted. It wasn't just a random encounter at the store anymore. He seemed to know my schedule and would appear at places where he knew that I would be. One Saturday morning, I decided to take Oliver to the farmer's market. It was one of our favorite weekend activities, and I hadn't mentioned it to anyone. As we were browsing the stalls, I felt a tap on my shoulder, and I turned to find Mark smiling at us. "Hey, Jennifer, fancy seeing you here," he said. I forced a smile, trying to hide my discomfort. "Oh, hi, Mark. Enjoying the market?" "Absolutely. Got some great produce here. How's Oliver doing?" he asked, bending down to greet my son. Oliver, being the friendly and trusting kid that he is, chatted with Mark for a bit. But my instincts were screaming at me that something was off. I tried to wrap up our conversation quickly, and I told Mark that we needed to get home. By now, I was convinced that Mark was following me. I decided to change my routine to see if it would make a difference. I started shopping at a different grocery store, I varied my routes to work, and I even took Oliver to a different park. For a while, it seemed to work. I didn't see Mark anymore, and I started to feel a bit more at ease. But the sense of relief was short-lived. One evening, as I was leaving work, I noticed a familiar car parked in the lot. My heart sank as I realized that it was Mark's car. He was sitting inside, and when he saw me, he then got out and walked over. "Hey, Jennifer, I was just in the area and I thought that I would say hi," he said, his smile as warm as ever. I tried to hide my panic and I answered, "Oh, hi Mark, I'm actually in a rush to pick up Oliver, so I have to go." "I can give you a ride if you want," he offered. "Oh, no, that's okay. I've got it covered. I need to go," I said firmly. As I drove away, my hands were shaking. How did he know where I worked? I hadn't told him. The realization that he was likely following me was terrifying. The final straw came a few days later. I had decided to take Oliver to a nearby town just for a change of scenery, you know? We spent the afternoon exploring and having fun, just the two of us. And as we were getting ready to leave, I saw Mark walking towards us. My blood ran cold. He said, "Jennifer, what a coincidence. I didn't expect to see you here." He was acting surprised. I just couldn't take it anymore, so I demanded, "Mark, this is getting creepy. Why are you following me?" His friendly facade dropped, replaced by a look of anger. "I'm not following you, Jennifer. We're just running into each other. Why are you making a big deal out of this?" "Because it is a big deal. You've shown up at places where I never mentioned I would be. That's not normal, Mark," I said, my voice trembling. He then came very close to me and then said with a very disturbing tone, "We belong together, Jennifer. Can't you see that? I'm not following you, Jennifer. I'm just looking out for you, helping you. Why can't you appreciate that?" I was terrified, so I threatened, "Stay away from me and my son, or I will call the police on you." His face twisted in rage, but he took a step back and said, "Fine, but you'll regret this, Jennifer. I didn't do anything wrong," he said before he stormed off. I immediately went home and I called a friend to come over and stay with us. I was too scared to be alone. I also contacted the police and filed a report, and they took my statement. I haven't seen Mark since that confrontation, but one night, when I was at home watching TV, and my son Oliver was asleep in his room, I thought I heard the doorknob jiggle. So I turned the volume down and I listened intently. But then, I heard it. Footsteps. There was someone walking around the house. I didn't waste any time. I grabbed my phone and then ran upstairs into my son's room. I locked the door and then I called the police. I was whispering to the operator about my situation when I heard glass breaking. I quickly updated the operator about what was going on, and thank goodness, she informed me that the police were close. The glass breaking woke up my son, and he was scared, but I told him to be quiet, and thankfully he listened. I could hear footsteps walking around the house. Then I heard police sirens from a distance and a door shutting. The police arrived and we only exited the room once they were right by my son's door knocking and telling us that it was safe to come out. I was a mess. I was crying and I was trying to explain what happened to them. The police officers searched the house and found no one other than a broken window and shattered glass on the floor. I was so upset thinking whoever did this got away. Until we heard some shouting and a scuffle out the back part of my house. We had some trees there and a little shed where I like to keep things. One police officer went out back to check the whole area and found someone hiding by the shed, hidden by the trees. and when they brought the person out front, I saw who it was. If you were guessing that it was Mark, then you would get a 10 out of 10 for that. It was him. I told the officer that I knew who he was, and I told them the whole situation with him. Mark denied it, but the things inside his backpack didn't really help him. He had rope, tape, a knife, and some other things in there that definitely screamed that he was lying and that he was up to no good. A long story short, I pressed charges and also filed for a restraining order. I am still shaken with the whole experience, but I am trying to move on. I've learned to trust my instincts and be more cautious about the people that I interact with. I'm just glad that me and my son are safe. So everyone, please, stay safe out there. And here's the riddle for this video. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate it. I would also like to give some extra love to my Patreon members, my channel members, and also my tippers. Thank you so much. If you would like to extend a little bit more support for the channel, don't forget to leave a like and a comment down below. If you would like to become a Patreon member, a channel member, a tipper, or even to buy merch, check out the links in the description below. Again, thank you. And I hope you stay scared, because your fear feeds me.